Tucker Carlson just took a trip to Australia. You might have seen it in the news. And this might come as no surprise to you, but it's still surprising to me, man. Apparently, there are brain-dead cultural Marxists posing as journalists basically all over the world, man. It is not, sadly, it is not just some horrible American thing. These people are everywhere. Only in Australia, they sound kind of cool. And Tucker was there. He gave a really, really, really good talk, and he took quite a few questions from these Australian journalists. And I got to be honest, man, each one of these people is somehow dumber than the last.
Preempted my question on Putin.
Putin!
I think you did strategically because you knew it's what we'd ask.
Putin! He's so bad!
And I also appreciate that...
Did he make you take the COVID shot?
Take the what?
The COVID shot? No, he didn't. Sorry.
The COVID shot saved probably tens of millions.
Oh, yeah,
and
definitely. Safe and effective. This is why everyone loves the media.
Probably 100 times more lives than Putin has killed in Ukraine.
It's like a time capsule. It's like you're like the last Japanese soldier on Okinawa. You think the war's still going. Oh, it's hilarious. Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm being boorish.
Can I get the full answer in without interruption?
Okay, I beg your pardon.
I'm interested in your position on Putin. Many people in this crowd would adore conservative prime ministers in this country like John Howard, Tony Abbott, mainstream right-wingers like Boris Johnson, Australian Liberals, some of their MPs are in the crowd, are vehemently anti-Putin. They believe he's a reprehensible figure who doesn't believe in the values of conservatism, such as the rule of law and democracy, which gives us the freedoms we have in our countries. I'm interested, do you feel any level of shame or regret that you were termed a useful idiot, and then post your interview, Vladimir Putin himself said in his Russian media that he was surprised at how weak your questions were, and he also said that you were wrong when you said that no other journalist had asked to interview him. He said, that's not true. We only thought Tucker was the only person to report fairly.
Wait, I thought that you were describing Putin as a psychopathic liar, and yet now you're taking his word for things?
Do you...
Let me just quickly unpack your absurd soliloquy if I can. First, I'm stuck on the idea that Boris Johnson is a right-winger. Do you know Boris Johnson? I do. Boris Johnson is a criminal buffoon who, like so many who claim to love Ukraine, is single-handedly responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men in this war that Ukraine cannot win. And I would refer you to Wikipedia. How many more people does Russia have than Ukraine? Do you know? 100 million. 100 million. And in a land war, that's a relevant number. It is not possible for Ukraine to beat Russia. The best they can do is sue for peace. That's been known, including by Zelensky, who wanted that since the early days of this conflict. And Boris Johnson, on orders from the Biden administration, shut down, and this is not a disputed fact, this is a fact, admitted by everybody now, shut down the peace negotiations almost 2 years ago. And Ukraine has been completely destroyed. And now Zelensky has passed a law allowing foreign corporations to own land there. So you tell me what Ukraine is going to look like in 30 years when all of it is owned by BlackRock and multinational corporations and its population is not Ukrainian, okay?
I promise you, man, most of the world has absolutely zero clue that that happened. They have no idea that peace was ever discussed. They have no idea that it was ever even a possibility. Still might be a possibility. They have no idea. All they know is that Joe Biden and all his many partners in the world and in corporate media have told them that Ukraine not only can win the war, but in a lot of cases, they've told you that Ukraine is winning the war. And I don't know, man. I mean, I hope they do. Miracles do actually happen and anything is possible. But Ukraine outlasting Russia in a war of attrition, which is what this is honestly not all that likely, right? But none of these powerful people care because it's never been about that. It's never been about that. It's without a doubt a land grab. It's a land grabbing, money laundering, globalist operation, and they do not care how many people die. No one cares.
So the tragedy of what's happened in Ukraine, orchestrated by the Western powers, including your government, and I hope you do, and driven by my government, I feel shame about it, I hope you do too, is really one of the great crimes of my lifetime. So the idea that somehow if you're against that, you're for Putin, well, of course, that's absurd. And by the way, speaking of your friend Boris Johnson, he attacked me, of course, ad hominem, and so I called him. He was a journalist, not surprisingly, a man of low character, not shocking. And so I called him and I said, well, you've called me all these names. Why don't you sit down for a conversation? I happen to be in your rainy, depressing slum, London, and we could have a conversation. And he said, I won't do that unless you pay me $1 million. That's a fact. That's a non-disputed fact. I have the text messages. So if that is the credible source of the slur that, look, if I were a toady of Putin or I loved Putin, I would just say so. Because why do I care? I've already been fired. I don't work for anybody. I have no incentive. And by the way, it's perfectly fine if people love Putin. Well, I don't understand what that has to do with anything. We are citizens of different countries. We should judge first and foremost our own leaders. How's our country doing? How are my children doing? What's their future?
Absolute facts. I mean, we're all citizens of different countries, yet everything on the planet is somehow either pro-Putin or against Putin. If you don't support whatever radical, insane agenda that they've got manufactured today, then you're just a Putin stooge. I mean, that's what it is. And it really is ridiculous. And Tucker's absolutely right, man. We should be judging our own leadership. I mean, how are our families doing? How are our finances doing? How is our country doing? I promise you, Vladimir Putin himself cannot claim to be responsible for the most dangerous land migration route in all of human history. That's us. That's the United States. That's the most powerful country in the world. That's Joe Biden. But instead of talking about any of that, instead of even caring about any of that, a guy like Tucker Carlson goes to Australia and the local media asks him, do you regret interviewing Putin? Because everyone says that you're just a useful idiot. I mean, how freaking lazy is that, man? They're not even trying, but somehow it gets worse.
None of that has anything to do with Putin, except to the extent that you all, this country, sit back, your government allows the Biden administration to push us into nuclear war, which is where we are right now, right on the cusp of it. And somehow that's not a story. That is that Putin doesn't respect human rights or the rule of law. Okay, well, just today, Julian Assange was released after 12 years. 12 years in custody. And your government did nothing. The UK made it possible, and the United States demanded it. You tell me how that's consistent with the rule of law or democracy. It's not. It's ruled by the intel agencies. It's lawlessness, and it's a crime. So I'm not saying that we're morally equivalent to Putin. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is our concern should be first and foremost, how are our countries run? And we give our own leaders a pass time and time again because they point to some other creep on the world stage and say, he's bad. Kim Jong-un is bad. Well, yeah, of course he's bad. That's why I don't live in North Korea. That's why I don't live in Russia. I have no interest in living in Russia. But the point is, you're bad too. And the fact that he's bad does not allow you to continue being bad. What?
Spot on. And obviously we all know this is exactly how they operate regarding Donald Trump. And Trump proves you don't actually have to be bad for any of this to work. They just have to find a way to make you look bad. Change a civil statute of limitations here, manipulate a few misdemeanors over there, release some pointless phone calls, have the FBI stage a few pictures, have the media basically cut down 10-minute speeches into a few 18-second clips, and then boom. And the same exact play that Tucker's talking about here. Same exact play, but, don't mind the economy, don't mind crime, don't mind your grocery bills and the fact that you can't even afford to move if you want to. Trump is bad. Putin is bad. Save democracy, respect the rule of law, vote blue no matter who. And that's basically the gist of it, man. And it is so freaking remarkably hollow and stupid that I cannot honestly believe how well it continues to work.
And the last thing I will say that I really feel deeply and I really resent on an emotional level, and you'll pardon my passion, I don't know you, I'm sure we'd be very close friends if we did know each other, but I really resent what I have seen across the West in the past 15 years, and it's a sea change from my youth when my father was a reporter, this alignment between media organizations and the government. I find disgusting, actually. I think it's a perfect inversion of what you're supposed to do. If you're a journalist, Your job is to challenge power on behalf of the powerless. It is not to align with the powerful against the powerless. And that is precisely what you have done. I watched your ABC this morning in my hotel room for about 20 minutes until I looked around for a vomit bag. And I watched, it was one of the most grotesque, I couldn't even believe it was real. The first story, this is unbelievable. The first story was Assange. God bless them. That is the biggest story. The second story was a family of 4 found dead in a house. I think in a suburb of Sydney, but it may have been Melbourne. I beg your pardon. But 4 Australians found dead of what they suspected was a drug OD. Apparently they've been taking a new synthetic opioid that has emerged in Australia and is killing people. Now this is a huge problem where I live, much bigger than here, but I'm familiar with it. And the reporter said it's probably the synthetic opioid and it's been seen and they're dead. On to the next story. The next story was the Australian government's new law that will require a prescription to buy nicotine products. And we were treated to a 15-minute lecture on ABC, whatever the hell that is, about how nicotine is dangerous and we need to keep it out of the hands of Australians. And I'm like, wait a second. Nicotine, first of all, is not dangerous. That's not true. That's factually incorrect. You know nothing about the science, A. B, compared to what? Compared to what? Oh, we have this new synthetic opioid that's killing people. The government, not too concerned. What they're really concerned about is that people might be using nicotine, which, by the way, has the byproduct of raising testosterone levels and making people a little harder to command. That's a massive threat! So this is the point where the media gets involved and says, wait a second, let's chart the death toll from vaping versus fentanyl. Maybe one's a little worse than the other. And what exactly are you doing about it? Why don't you press your ministers and your prime minister, like, what are you doing about it, about drug use? And the answer is nothing. Instead, they're hassling people adults who want to use nicotine, which I would highly recommend to every person in this room as a life-enhancing, God-given chemical. That's just my view. But I'm like, a media should be like holding these people to the fire on that. I was fired over a year ago, so I don't have to like worry about this or be defensive about it because I like don't have a job. So there is a certain freedom in unemployment. And so I sympathize with you guys who work for these companies that are like truly corrupt and you sort of know that, but you don't want to deal with it because you've got kids and a mortgage. I get it. I've been there. But let's just be honest. Everybody else knows what it is. Everyone else knows how corrupt you are. And so there's a reason they have contempt for you. I'm just saying.
Isn't it amazing, man? I mean, the entire Western world, actually the entire world is burning in a lot of the same ways. And it's all exacerbated by the same thing everywhere, in every single place. And Tucker put it well again. I mean, when he said that the point of the media is to hold the powerful to account on behalf of the powerless, he's exactly right. It's not to align with the powerful against the powerless, which really, there's no better way to put it than that, because that is exactly what we have. And like he said, he feels sorry for him. Being unemployed is almost a relief for him, he says. He calls these guys out for working for companies and publications that they know to be corrupt. And that is 100% completely accurate. Unless they are really just very, very stupid, they know that their employers, their business is corrupt.
No, I might pass you over to Andrew Green from the ABC.
Oh, I love it! You gonna take my nicotine? It's dangerous.
Good afternoon, Tucker.
A prescription for nicotine. Okay.
I missed that segment this morning.
It's
so
shocking. You should watch it. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen on television.
I do want to ask about a country you haven't mentioned today, and that's China. You may or may not be aware of a strategic partnership Australia is involved with your country and the United Kingdom called AUKUS, where we will get nuclear-powered submarines. Can I get your assessment of that? And it was largely in response to China. Do you think China poses a threat here?
I think that, first of all, I think it's very complicated, but I think the overview is this. China has 1.4 billion people and not enough resources or land. Australia has 26 million people and a sparsely populated continent that is brimming, overflowing with resources that countries with expanding economies need. And I don't know how expensive your politicians are. I'm guessing not very. So I don't think it would be too much of a lift for China to just buy them all, and I assume they already are doing that. I mean, obviously they are doing that, and they're doing that in my country too. They bought the current president's son. So I'm not mad at China for that. Well, they did. They bought Hunter Biden. I mean, that's the whole story. And it's proven. Okay, so I'm not mad at China about that, just for the record. I'm not particularly anti-China. I don't want to live in China. It's not my system at all, and I find a lot of parts of the culture repugnant. On the other hand, I see China, a country acting in its own interest. So I'm not mad about that. I'm mad about the countries like my own and possibly yours that allow themselves to be taken advantage of. That's the truly shameful thing. So I don't hate, again, I just don't hate China. You know, I see a rapidly growing country that will do whatever it can to help itself. And if it crushes people in the way, it will. Okay. So that's pretty reasonable. That's kind of a, time-tested model. Your job is not to be crushed. And so I'd be very, very, very concerned about it. I don't think you face an imminent invasion or anything. I do think that the concerns about China, just the size differential, the resource question, population, these are the fears that have pushed generations of Australian governments into a counterproductive alliance with the United States and Great Britain. I think the view here is that the U.S. will rescue us if we ever really have a problem. And I don't think that's true. I'm sorry to say that. And I'm just saying that as, I just don't think it's true. And I think you're unwise for believing it's true. And I think a lot of people on Taiwan thought that was true. It turns out not to be true.
What an absolutely fantastic point and perspective. And really, man, it all goes back to the programming and the narrative. You know, our politicians, our leaders, our institutions have found a way to literally deflect and obscure everything negative about them, their own shortcomings, their own failures, and probably their own corruptions. And they do it all just by, it's so simple. They do it just by pointing the finger. I mean, they're bad, China bad, Putin bad, and whatever other boogeyman anyone can come up with, it's all bad. Tucker bad. But, Tucker, he's absolutely right. I mean, obviously, China is comprised of dangerous authoritarians and communists, but we all know that. We should all be aware of that at least. I mean, every single thinking person on the planet is aware of that, and we have been for generations. And really, can you really fault a country like that for being exactly what they are by behaving exactly as they've been advertised? Or should we blame and find fault with ourselves, with Western bureaucracies that literally have empowered them? They've allowed them to essentially take over most of the world's natural resources, a good portion of the world's farmlands, and we've literally allowed them to prey on economies and take basically anything and everything that they wanted to take. It's not their fault that we're stupid. I mean, really, it's a great point. It is not their fault that we're stupid. They are playing the same game that we are, and we're letting them win. But yeah, that is a stupidly simple, really, really great point. And as far as America, man, or any of the West nutting up and taking on China to protect or save an ally, he's right. There's zero chance. There's absolutely no chance, especially with the kind of people that we have currently in control right now. There's just no way that we would. And Tucker's right. Taiwan absolutely proves that. In fact, a lot of different places and examples prove that.
I think a lot of Pashtuns in Afghanistan thought that was true. A lot of Montagnards in Vietnam thought that was true. A lot of Christian Iraqis thought that was true, and all of them learned the hard way that it's not true. That in the end, countries act in their own interest. And in a democratic system, leadership changes every 4 or 8 years with different views, expressing, evolved opinions from the public. So no democratic country can be longitudinally reliable as a partner simply because its government changes so often. That's just a fact. It's not an attack. I'm not attacking the United States. I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying, if you think that allowing the U.S. government to stage, foreign troops on your soil, they didn't beat you in a war, did they? Then why do they have foreign troops here? I'm sorry. I know I'm offending everybody. It's just a fact. And I don't know if that's like a huge part of your economy, but like rule one in my country is we don't have foreign troops on our soil because we're a sovereign country. And I don't understand why all these countries allow it. I mean, I love the United States. I'm glad, that we've got the whip hand, I guess. But I don't think any country should put up with that. No, you can't have soldiers in my country. Go away. You know what I mean? Like, we can be friends, but having troops on my soil suggests not a friendship, but a master-slave relationship. And I'm just not into it at all. And I don't think you should be into it either.
But that's exactly what a lot of these places want, man. And honestly, they get the better end of the deal. They're well paid and they're better provided for than any of our own American citizens ever will be. But that's exactly what it was about, a master-slave relationship. And now, generations into it, it's hard to tell who the master is and who the slave is. I mean, for sure, without a doubt, the American taxpayer, we're enslaved. There's no doubt about that. I mean, we all know that. But, America appears to have, basically, we've enslaved the entire country as well. I mean, when you're paying more to manage debt than you are on your own sovereign defense, then you're not the master of anything. Not anymore. I mean, you're just along for the ride. And it sounds like Tucker believes the ride is going to lead, or always leads, to some sort of avoidable, unnecessary conflict. And I think he's probably right. I think most roads do lead there. And, he's really right in this next one. I mean, this is the interaction that made all the headlines. This is the journalist that really is, I mean, she can't be trying.
So you talked a little bit about immigration, and in the past you've talked about how white Australians, Americans, Europeans are being replaced by non-white immigrants in what is often referred to as the Great Replacement Theory. This is the same...
Have I said that whites are being replaced?
Well...
I don't think I said that.
Well, it's been mentioned on your show 4,000 times. And
really, when did I say that?
On your show.
I said whites are being replaced?
You have said that before.
Really?
Yeah.
I would challenge you to cite that, because I'm pretty sure I haven't said that. I said native-born Americans are being replaced, including blacks.
Native-born Americans.
Native-born Americans.
And
Americans black Americans have been, African Americans have been in the United States for, in many cases, their families over 400 years. And their concerns are every bit as real and valid and alive to me as the concerns of white people whose families have been there 400 years. So I've never said that whites are being replaced. Not one time. And you can't cite it.
Untrue.
So we just met, but when our relationship starts with a lie, it makes it tough to be friends. So
you've been lying
let's
about
pull
my
that back. I'm happy to explain what I do think.
So.
Well, you actually can't say it because I didn't say it, and I don't believe it. And I'm telling you that to your face, so why don't you just accept me at face value? My concern is that the people who are born in the country are the main responsibility of it.
Because they can't, man. Face value is not a thing that is even in their vocabulary. I mean, I would absolutely guarantee you that the young lady here, she's never even researched Tucker Carlson on her own. She's never listened to him, never watched any clips, never read any of his books, never even tried. She's just relying on, distillations and regurgitations from people like the Joy Reids of the world, and those are the people that swear that Tucker Carlson is some evil right-wing bigot pushing replacement theory is what they call it. But the problem for them is replacement is real, but it has nothing to do with race. It has to do with citizenry. Citizens are being replaced in the workforce. The vote of citizens is being made almost powerless, because even in the places where non-citizens can't vote, they're still counted on the census, which changes the districting and really affects the representation of actual citizens. The left knows this. They know all of this. And that's why they have to shut it down anytime there's any mention of it. And the only way they can shut anything down is the only way they know works for sure. Call everybody bigots, say it has nothing to do with hate, it's a conspiracy, blah, 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 blah. But they know it's true. And apparently, they've gotten the very same directive as far away as Australia. But I mean, that kind of garbage does not work on Tucker Carlson. You're going to have to cite your sources, and you better bring some receipts.
It's leaders. And as noted earlier, when those leaders shift their concern from the people whose responsibility it is to take care of to people around the world, to put their priorities above that of their own citizens, that's immoral. And they are being replaced in my country, people who are born in the United States. And the birth rate tells the whole story. They're not at replacement rate. And so the U.S. population is growing because we're importing people from other countries. And my view is that happy people have children, and a functioning economy allows them to do that. And we don't have that. And so you need to fix the economy and fix the culture and make it so that people who want to have kids can. You don't just go for the quick sugar fix of importing new people. That's my position. And if you think that's racist, that's your problem.
I never called you a racist.
But of course you are suggesting, and
well,
I must say one of the reasons people don't like people like you in the media is that you never say exactly what you mean. Your slurs are all by implication, and you're about to tell me the Great Replacement Theory is racist or anti-Semitic, whatever. I've said what I've said to you right now 100 times in public. I hope to, if I live long enough, say it 100 more times. I think it's completely honest and real, not racist or scary. It's factually true. It's not a theory, it's a fact. And the whole point of your question was to be like, you're a scary racist.
Well, I haven't
And
actually
my
finished my
response is, no,
question.
I'm not. Okay, well, how about no more lying in your questions, and then I'll answer it.
Okay, well, this is the same theory, or as you say, idea, that has inspired the New York Buffalo shooting where 11 black Americans were killed.
On.
2
You know
white
what I mean?
Americans were killed.
Like,
And it's also
okay,
inspired...
it's not, first of all...
It's inspired one of the worst Australian guns
How do
of
they
all
get
time
people
to
this
shoot
stupid in the media? I guess it doesn't pay well. Look, I'm sorry. I've lived among people like you for too long, and I don't mean to call you stupid. Maybe you're just pretending to be, but I'm totally against violence. I'm totally against the war in Ukraine, for example, which doubtless you support. And like all dutiful liberals, support more carnage. I don't. I hate mass shootings, actually. Nothing I said, what does it mean to inspire something? My views are not bigoted against any group. They're honest, they're factual. That's not hate, that's reality. And my views derive from my deep concern for Americans, actually. Americans aren't having kids because they can't afford to, and nobody in charge cares. And so that's my position. That doesn't inspire mass shootings. How dare you try to tie me to some lunatic who murdered people? How dare you, actually? And in fact, I mean, do you know what I mean? I'd be like, Hitler wore those shoes. A lot of people are saying that you're like Hitler. Can you explain those shoes? Hitler wore exactly the same shoes, and you're like, I've got nothing to do with Hitler. Well, that's how I feel about your absurd, disingenuous question.
Right, so therefore you support gun control?
What? I thought it couldn't get dumber, but it did. No, I don't support disarming law-abiding people so they can't defend themselves. So the government has a monopoly on violence? I don't think so. First of all, in my country, that's illegal, as you know. But moreover, it should be illegal in every country. A sovereign person has the right to defend himself and his family. Period. And that said, I'm totally opposed to harming anyone. Are you concerned about the war in Ukraine? And the countless innocents being murdered there every single day? I doubt you are. Probably Putin bad. I am. I'm a Christian. I hate violence. I hate mass shootings. I have guns at home, and often on my person when I'm in the United States, I'm proud to say, because I want to defend myself and those I love against violence. That's the point. I'm not perpetrating crimes. I'm not shooting strangers. I'm defending what I love. And if you're against that, I guess I would ask why. Why would you be against that?
Well, so you don't think you harbor any kind of responsibility for these hate crimes?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to be charitable. I was like, maybe you're just pretending to be dumb. Now I don't think it's an act.
Tucker, thank you for taking those questions. I'm sure you enjoyed some
Actually, I
questions from the
loved it. I
press.
just feel sorry. I mean, because I got here and the country's so unbelievably beautiful and the people are so cheerful and funny and cool and smart. I'm like, your media's got to be better than ours. It can't just be a bunch of castrated robots reading questions from the boss. And then it turns out it's exactly the same, maybe even a tiny bit dumber.
Yeah, I don't know about a tiny bit dumber. That seemed to be a lot bit dumber. And it's exactly what Tucker said. I mean, there is no better way to put it. A bunch of castrated robots just reading questions from the boss. That is what the media has become. And honestly, I cannot believe what we just saw. I wanted to break in and, every time she said something dumb, but it got so bad and so lazy, I couldn't even pick a spot. It's amazing to me that, leftists, liberals, and journalists, they are the same level of incompetent and corrupt and lazy literally all over the entire world. It just blows my freaking mind, man. I've said it before, but on the one hand, it's almost a relief to know that stupidity isn't uniquely American. But on the other hand, it's freaking terrifying, man. They're freaking everywhere. Their insane virus has literally spread everywhere. And we got to find a way to stop them, man. And we have got to have people like Tucker just broadcasting this insanity as often and as wide as possible. There's no way that people with any level of common sense could possibly watch that and not somehow, at least a little bit, get snapped out of their liberal virtue signaling nightmare. People have got to wake up. But that's just my take, man. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't already, guys, be a part of our growth. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. I'll see you in the next one.